Want to know how to get money for your nonprofit before you get 501c3 status? We're going to go over that in this video. Let's do it. Hey, it's Tiffany with Boss on a Budget. I help people start their nonprofits and raise money for their nonprofits. I have a small private membership community. If you'd like to sign up to join, just comment "I want to join" below, and I will send you the link to sign up and pay below. Many of you are in that kind of weird phase where you're trying to raise money to get started with your nonprofit, but you don't know if you can actually raise the money or how to raise money before you actually have 501c3 status. With some of this, people get the terminology incorrect. So some people may be assuming that if you're a nonprofit, you automatically have 501c3 status, or you're not a nonprofit unless you have 501c3 status. So I break some of that down in the video I'm linking above. But the bottom line is you are a nonprofit when you establish your business in whatever state that you want to establish or where you want to operate. 501c3 status does not make you a nonprofit. It is the next step after you incorporate if you are an actual nonprofit corporation, but you can be a nonprofit and not have 501c3 status. So I just want to get that clear before we go any further. And because of that, then there are many situations where you can raise money before you have 501c3 status because you're technically already a nonprofit. But it gets a little complicated, so I'm going to break it all down in this video. So what I'm going to do is just explain the fundraising rules when you're not a 501c3 organization, and then I'm going to give you 3 ways to raise money before you have 501c3 status. Before I get into the nitty-gritty of the video, just know that the answer to a lot of this is it depends. And so it really depends on what state that you're operating in, the state you're incorporating in, the status of your organization, your charitable purpose, what you really want to do, the kind of fundraisers you want to do. All of that may impact some of the information that you hear in this video, but I just want to give you general information that you can use to help start your research process to figure out what you need to do. So let's go over the rules really quickly. So in order for you to ask for money from individuals or to get grants, that all makes up what's called contributed income, then more than likely your state requires you to go through a process called charitable registration or charitable solicitation. At least 40 of the states require you to go through this process if you want to ask for money through donations and through grants. So if you know that a donor or a funder resides in a certain state or operates in a certain state, then you need to make sure that you're following the rules in that state. So what does this mean for you as a nonprofit? Well, it means that if you are raising money, then you need to check in your state to see if you have to be registered as a charitable organization first. And there's usually an application process and a fee that you have to pay. And this is a regular fee that you have to keep up with. But this doesn't just apply to the state that you operate in or the state where you started. It applies, again, like I said, to the states where your potential donors and your funders reside. And there are a lot of states who consider you having a donate button or giving people access to donate to you through digital methods like through fundraisers, your donate link, through your website, through a Facebook fundraiser. A lot of states consider that solicitation, meaning they want you to apply to be able to do that if you want to ask for money from their residents. So you have to research the rules in all of the states that you plan to solicit and ask for money from people to make sure that you're following the rules. The reason why I'm breaking this down is that this is the most important part of like fundraising compliance that you need to be aware of, not 501c3 status. Now, you should be disclosing to people when you are raising money that you do not have your status. You can let them know that it's pending if you've already applied. And the IRS gives you a certain amount of time where you can retroactively claim your incorporation date so people can get their tax deduction once you eventually get your status. So there is time for people to still deduct from their taxes the amount they donate to you, even if you don't have 501c3 status when that person donates. So see how it gets a little complicated and it gets a little tricky, and you can't just give blanket statements saying, oh, you absolutely cannot raise money if you don't have 501c3 status. And then you can't say, oh, you absolutely can raise money. It all depends, and it mostly depends on what your state says and advises about that. Now, there are some states who require you to have 501c3 status in order to solicit for funds. Now, if that's the case, then obviously you need to have the status before you do that, but that is not the majority of states. So you just need to equip yourself with the knowledge to understand what the rules are and what you're allowed to do. Harbor Compliance is a great website to check on compliance information, especially when it comes to charitable registration or charitable solicitation. So I'm linking that website below so you can check it out. So let's talk about 3 ways you can raise money before you have 501c3 status if you're in the clear to do so. The first way, and it's the way that I really do recommend, is that you ask your board to contribute a certain amount of money to support the startup of the organization. Now, if you hear me say this and you're like, what? Ask my board to do what? First of all, I'm supposed to have a board. Second of all, they're supposed to give money. Yes and yes. So if you've watched this channel, you should know that in order to have a nonprofit, you do need to have a board, not just legally, but also you need to have a board strategically, because they're going to help elevate the message of the organization, and they're going to help you with strategic planning and visioning. And they have certain roles that are required in order to serve as a board member. It is a very crucial role, and it's something that funders and donors often look to see how strong you are. So you need to be focused in the beginning on developing a strong board of people who can walk alongside you to launch this organization, and they need to be committed to raising money alongside you, but also contributing money with you. So I would suggest that you ask people who are coming to the table to submit a certain amount of money. By month is a great way to do it instead of doing something on a lump sum basis, but ask them to contribute a certain amount every month to support the work of the organization. So sometimes people ask me, well, how much, Tiffany? How much should I ask the board to give? And it really is dependent on who's on your board, because not everybody can give at the same level. So usually I suggest that you ask people to contribute an amount that's significant to them. And that's normally somebody who's serving on an established board. But if you are a startup board, I really highly recommend that you all set a minimum amount that you all are going to invest, because you have to be the first investors in the mission. And if you're not willing to do that, how can other people be willing to do that? And there may be some people on your board, because you're trying to attract a diverse board, who may not have it, who may not have the resources to give at the level that other people may give. But that's why you can set a minimum amount, or you can have that open conversation, because you all should be talking about money, and you should be transparent about what it takes to make the organization go. And as a side note, as you are recruiting board members, make sure you make it clear to them what their role is. And that also includes helping to fundraise and also ensuring the financial health of the organization. And a big part of that is contributing money. They should be aware that it's an expectation to contribute money, so there are no surprises later on down the line. The second way to raise money before 501c3 status is to raise money using an earned income strategy. I'm using a very broad term when I say this. I talked about this in this other video that I'm linking above, but I just simply mean sell something, sell a product or a service that you get paid for, and use that money to help support the startup work of your organization. So it could be as simple as a bake sale or a car wash. People do popcorn sales. People do pizza sales. You could also sell information. You could provide classes, right? The whole point of this is that people are exchanging something of value for their money. So they're getting a service or they're getting a product. It could be t-shirt sales, right? They're getting something in exchange for the money. So they're not necessarily donating, though in this process, they should be aware that their purchase is supporting the development of your organization and the fulfillment of your mission. That has to be a strong connection when you're doing your sales and things like that. But the benefit of using an earned income strategy where you're just getting money for a service you provide or a product you sell is that the money is then unrestricted. There aren't rules of charitable solicitation when it comes to earned income, because you're not asking for money. You are getting money in exchange for something that you provided to that customer. There are a lot of things to consider when you're using earned income strategies, but the biggest thing I want you to pay attention to is when you're using that strategy, is it in alignment with your charitable purpose? And if it is not in alignment with your charitable purpose that you submit to the IRS, then they're going to want to tax that income. So the IRS has a whole publication on this, and there are some exclusions. So if you're doing fundraisers that are not a regular part of your business, then that activity may be exempt. If every now and then you do a popcorn fundraiser or a t-shirt fundraiser and it's just not a regular thing that you do, you may be excluded from having to pay tax on the income that you produce using that activity. But if you're doing an activity that generates a lot of business and a lot of income for you, but it's not related to your charitable purpose that you're going to eventually put on your application for 501c3 status, then that's going to be a red flag for the organization. The other thing I'll say is you're kind of in this period where you're waiting to get 501c3 status. So a lot of this won't come to bear until the end of your fiscal year, right? So you won't really have to report on this stuff, or it really won't make sense until it's time to submit your 990 paperwork, or when it's time to apply for 501c3 status, because that's when the IRS will start to ask questions about the source of your money, which is really important for them to know. So if you're going to use an earned income strategy for big amounts of money or for the majority of your activities, I just want you to be aware of these rules so that you're still in compliance with the IRS and you don't jeopardize your status. So if you're interested in doing a lot of earned income strategies, look up unrelated business income tax related to exempt organizations. And I will also link some documentation from the IRS below so you can go to the source and read for yourself. But if we're talking about in the beginning, and we're talking about you're just trying to raise money for fees. You're trying to raise $500 so you can pay the state fee and then the $275 for the 1023 EZ form. I'm throwing out all kinds of numbers, right? But if you're paying the $275 for the 1023 EZ form to get your 501c3 status, then you're probably trying to raise less than $1,000, and it may not matter as much that you're doing those kinds of activities. So it's completely reasonable for you to do a car wash or bake sale. I've seen sock sales, all the things that I mentioned before as a way to get that initial startup money for your organization. And then finally, the obvious answer to raising money before 501c3 status is to get money from individuals. Run a campaign where you're telling people that you're starting an organization, that you're addressing an issue or fulfilling a need in your community, and you need the startup funds to do that. Well, some people don't feel comfortable doing that without 501c3 status. So an option may be for you to get a fiscal sponsor. A fiscal sponsor is an organization that allows you to use their 501c3 status, making sure your activities are in alignment with their charitable purpose, and they'll allow you to use their exemption to do certain activities. So it's kind of like an umbrella organization, but you're still kind of separate. You're a project of the organization, and they're covering like the administrative pieces for you so that you can operate without having to go through the processes of incorporating a whole nonprofit business and getting 501c3 status yourself. So if you're in the process of getting your status, but you need to raise money or you need to get a grant and you need 501c3 status to do that, then a fiscal sponsor may be a good option for you in the meantime. Just keep in mind that fiscal sponsors will always charge a fee because it costs money for them to do your reporting. So they're actually collecting donations and collecting grants for you. They have to do all that reporting with the IRS and with grant funders and things like that. And that costs staff time. So there is going to be a fee that they charge, and you also need to be clear on the parameters of your agreement. How long is it going to last? What happens with the money? When do you get your money? All those kind of things that you need to work out for yourself. But fiscal sponsorship is absolutely an option for you. Thank you so much. If you have raised money before you got your 501c3 status, please share those strategies below so we can all learn from each other. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you need more information, visit me at bossonabudget.com. Also, listen to my Nonprofit Activator podcast, where I share inspiring stories of startup founders who are doing amazing work, oftentimes unnoticed and overlooked. So if you'd like to listen to the podcast, sign up below.